Hi, this is Dr. Jenny Byrne. Welcome to the second part of our CPCH Wellness Program demo around sleep basics. So the second part here, I want to talk a little bit about the body's sleep system. There's a lot of different terminology for this, but really it's the part of your body and your brain which helps control your sleep-wake cycle. So what is this? Okay, so here is a little bit of a neurophysiology diagram that shows how our brain knows when to be awake and when to be asleep. So basically in your eye, so you see a little diagram of an eye there on the left, you see your retina. The retina is in the back of your eye. That's where you have neuron cells called ganglion cells, which take information coming in from light. So there are special retina cells in your eye that when they have light hit them, they send a message to a deep part of your brain. So if you see that little dotted line, it's called the retinohypothalamic tract. That's a fancy term, but it goes into something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is abbreviated as SCN. And you can kind of see this as like a cross section of your brain, as if you were looking at someone's ear and kind of took the brain in half. So it's a deep part of the brain. It's a very old part of the brain. Animals have the same type of system as we do. And this nucleus is a collection of cells that's in the brain that then connects to something called the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is a tiny little gland, again, in the oldest part of your brain. And the pineal gland makes something called melatonin. So you see a little arrow there from pineal gland and a pink melatonin. Melatonin is a chemical. It's a hormone that the body makes naturally, and it makes melatonin, and the amount of melatonin will rise and fall depending on if it is day or night. And that is what helps tell your body whether it's time to be awake or to be asleep. And you may have seen melatonin that you can purchase in the drugstore as a vitamin. And in fact, melatonin is a non-prescription medication that people often use to help them with sleep. So they take a dose of melatonin in the evening when their body is naturally making more melatonin to help tell their brain and their body that, hey, it's time, I need to start getting ready for bed. So this diagram is just kind of showing you how it works from light to the eye, the retina in the eye, and then through a tract called the retinohypothalamic tract into a nucleus in your brain, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which then tells your pineal gland about when to make melatonin. So that's the neuroscience. More commonly, you'll hear about something called circadian rhythms or the body's circadian clock. So people and animals have this powerful internal clock which tells them when to be awake and when to be asleep. And it works in a 24-hour period. Now, some animals are more awake at night than during the day. So if any of you have cats, you know that cats are often kind of nocturnal, and they're awake more in the evening when it's dark than in the day. Now in humans and other animals, this 24-hour period has all sorts of different things that follow it. So it tells your body when to do more digestion, when your body temperature should be high and low, and when you should be sleeping and waking. And you can track these things on people. You can measure, for example, body temperature over time. And if you measure your body temperature over time, you can see your own circadian rhythm. We'll show a figure of that in a second. Basically, the main sleep period for people is when their body temperature is falling and low. So you're actually cooler when you're sleeping. And then as it's time to wake up, your body will start to have increased temperature. And that's the time you're waking up. And if you remember from the last slide, we looked at melatonin. Melatonin is rising when you're getting ready to go to sleep. And then it's falling in the morning. So body temperature and melatonin are on different peaks on your circadian clock. So here's a little graph, just very basic, to kind of show you what is happening with someone's body temperature on their circadian rhythm. So if you see along the bottom, it has times. It starts at midnight. It goes all the way through a day to the next midnight. And you can see that the body temperature goes up and down as you go through your day. So when it is midnight, your body temperature is low. So if you look over on the left, it starts out low. When you get up to noon, it gets high. When you go to midnight again, it gets low. And you can see here an arrow showing when the bedtime is typically before midnight. And then it goes up again and then down again and then up again and then down again. So this is happening all the time in your body. You may not realize it. But if you tracked your temperature every hour for a couple days, you would actually see your own circadian rhythm. This is really helpful because if we plot it like this, and there's a problem with their circadian rhythm, we can also plot that and sometimes figure out what's going on. So a classic example of that is jet lag. I have not plotted that here because I wanted to keep it simple. But if you had jet lag, this curvy line up and down would be shifted forward or backward depending on what time zone you were traveling to. And you can see how your body is just off. And so if you've ever had jet lag, you feel like your body is just off, like things don't feel right. You don't feel like you should be awake, or you don't feel like you should be asleep. And that's because your body hasn't caught up to the new light yet. And your body is telling you, you're right, it's not time to be awake or to be asleep. Another interesting thing about sleep, and a lot of you have probably heard about this, is that there is an architecture to sleep. There are different stages of sleep. This is a hypnogram for an adult, basically just showing you somebody as they go through the night, what stage of sleep they are in. So you see on this figure, awake is at the top. REM is rapid eye movement sleep. You probably heard a lot about that. That's when we're thought to be dreaming. Then you go into sleep stages 1, 2, 3, and 4, where the deep sleep is really down there at the bottom in 3 and 4. So this graph is showing me that for this person, when they went to sleep, they very quickly went down into that deep sleep. And you can see that they got most of their deep sleep in that 3 zone in the beginning of the night. And then as the night went on, they had other periods of deep sleep, but it was mostly at the beginning of the night. And then you can also see that as they get past 6 or 7 hours of sleep, they're really not getting the deep sleep as much. Now, this would look different for everybody. This would look different from night to night. But again, the sleep architecture can really hold some clues for us about if your sleep is normal or if you're having problems with sleep. So what happens if you have a problem with sleep? There are a lot of different potential problems with sleep. Jet lag we talked about, that's very common. That's not really a problem. It's just your body is not caught up to the time zone you're in. So it's a temporary problem that fixes itself. You can have insomnia. So a lot of people don't realize, but there are a lot of different types of insomnia. Insomnia can have problems with falling asleep at night or sleep initiation. Can be a problem with maintaining sleep or staying asleep. You can have poor sleep quality. So if you think back to that architecture of sleep, you're not getting into deep sleep enough. Or maybe you have early morning awakening. You're waking up a couple hours too early every morning. So there's actually a lot of different types of insomnia you have. And if you're having trouble with your sleep, it's really helpful to figure out what kind of problem you're actually having. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next section. You may have heard of narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is excessive sleep that's happening during the day, typically because you're not getting good sleep at night. There are things called circadian rhythm sleep disorders where that circadian rhythm is not normal. It's actually either shifted or disrupted, and that can cause big problems. And then there are things called parasomnias, which are things that happen around sleep and cause kind of abnormal sleep. So those were just a couple of basics about sleep. So you could see the neurobiology of sleep. You could see a little bit about our circadian rhythm and see a little bit about sleep architecture and some of the disorders that happens when that goes wrong. So in our next section, we're going to talk about what you can do to figure out if your sleep is normal or having problems,